to some books discussing this. The Hadrami diaspora is divided into two main categories, namely Sayyid or Ba'alawi and Sheikh, or usually we just call them non-Sayyid. And this paper is mainly concerned with the Ba'alawi. As argued by Vandenberg, the Hadrami who migrated were not among the wealthy sector of their homeland. And since the final 15 years of the 19th century, no single Arab who came to Batavia, here in Jakarta now, migrated only with the intention to spread Islam. And this is very much different with the stories that I used to hear from my extended family. The main intention of the Hadrami, of the members of the Hadrami community who migrated was to earn money. The fact that they could easily adjust with the local lifestyle, coupled with their assumed status as holders of religious authority, entitled them to earn a better income than the locals. And Pasar Kliwon, which is located in the central Japanese city of Solo, is the district where the majority of the Hadrami, both the Ba'alawi and the non-Ba'alawi descendants, live. And in the 1950s, many of the Hadramis in Solo owned textile factories. They established cooperation, batik cooperation, etc. And some of them were really rich people. And I will give now a brief story about my grandfather, who was quite a wealthy person. But that's my grandfather. The place where we used to live was a 1,000 square meter house in the heart of central Pasar Kliwon in Solo. In the 1960s, he was among the very few people in Solo who had Fiat cars. He owned a huge amount of land, weaving factories, and a summer house in the mountainous Tawangmangu area in the east of Solo. Some of the younger generation continued in the batik business and owned stores in the central market Pasar Kliwon. However, others adjusted their economic endeavors to the current market needs, including producing prayer outfits and also, of course, selling Hadrami culinary products. I'm not sure whether it can be considered Hadrami, but that's how they call it. The Ba'alawi community in Solo has been also concerned with education, and I think earlier it was mentioned about the Rabita Alawiyah, which was established early in the 1927. And then a similar organization, education institution was established in Solo called Sekolah Islam Diponegoro. And until 2000, the majority of the children who attended the school were from this Ba'alawi community. Even though the Hadramis, including those who settled in Indonesia, easily adjust with the local cultures of their host countries, the Ba'alawi's distinct lines of descent and its privileges also encourages this descent of the Prophet Muhammad to retain their identities. These efforts to maintain their identity in their respective host countries become evident in the following section of the chapter. And I will now move to, I try to be quick, I will move to 7 practices by the Ba'alawi in Solo that serve to maintain the identities of their host countries. Can you move to next? Next, number 1, yes. So how did they do, or what kind of activities now that they are facing this era of social media, and how they maintain their identities amidst this pressure of assimilation on the one hand, which is also sometimes done through the media, using the platform of social media. So first is what they do is they sending the Ba'alawi children to Hadramaut. The Ba'alawi community sends their children to study Islam there to maintain their relationship with the homeland and to gain knowledge from the authoritative centers of Islamic learning. The knowledge and experiences that this younger Ba'alawi gain will help them preserving the Tariqah Alawiyah, which was established by the Ba'alawi scholar Muhammad bin Ali Alawi, died in the 13th century. My uncles were 10 and 11 years old when they were taken by my grandfather back to Hadramaut. My grandfather has 15 children, 10 boys and 5 girls. Don't ask how many wives. After some 40 years, one of my uncles returned to Solo, get married to the Pahlavi woman in Solo, but my other uncle lived and got married to a woman, a Hadrami woman from Seiyun. So this short family account shows how efforts to immerse the Indonesian-born Pahlavi of the Muallat into the cultures and customs of their ancestors and to maintain relationship with the homeland by sending their children to Hadramaut was a serious endeavor for a family in the diaspora. And this practice, even though I was giving you the example of my uncle, but this practice continues up until today. The existence of Rabita Alawiyah, or now, as I mentioned, called Sekolah Islam Diponegoro in Solo, didn't seem to satisfy the need for the kind of authoritative education my grandfather and his people who live in the same time, to satisfy them for the education for the children. So despite Freytag's, we were talking about Freytag's earlier, Omar, Freytag's argument that religious learning, for which Hadramaut had been famous in the preceding centuries, went into decline in the 18th century, which might have been caused by political instability, the practice of sending youth to Hadramaut continued, especially with the development of transportation technologies in the 19th century. The earliest generation of the Indonesian-born Hadrami went to more traditional places in Hadramaut, but now, as you see, a more modern boarding school like Darul Mustafa for male, Darul Zahra for female, like people go there and study there, and also a more formal education system like Al-Ahqaf, and people now from Solo as well as Hadrami descends from other parts of Indonesia, they go there. So from this one point, we can take a conclusion that the information that are available, the sources of knowledge about Hadrami, about the cultures that are available online, is not enough. So in their attempts to uh, preserve the Tariqa Alawiyah, the what is available, the information online is not enough. So what they do is they're responding this by sending their children back to Hadramaut. But of course, later on I will also explain how they make use of the existence of social media platform. The second point, next please, that I would like to discuss briefly is the role of the Hadramaut alumni. Hope I still have. Okay. Those who have graduated from Hadramaut transfer and spread their knowledge and practices by opening boarding school and small to large scale pengajian or religious gathering sessions in Indonesia. And of course, because I'm talking about Solo, one of my cousin married also to a person who is also a Hadrami descent and opened up Ma'had Al-Hidayah, for example, in the area of Solo, and they continue to implement the Tariqah Alawiyah, especially through its daily Majlis Dhikr and its weekly chanting of Simtud Durar, Maulid written by Habib Alwi bin Ali Al-Habshi. So the above practices are not exclusively dominated by male members of the community, and this is an area in which I would like to develop my research on, is the role of women of Hadrami descent in preserving and spreading Tariqah Alawiyah. So this is an area that I need to do my research on, and later on I will reflect back on this point. So this is very interesting. The third point next is making the most of Habaib's presence from Hadramaut. So even though I'm referring to male Habib, but later on we see like in addition to the presence, for example, Habib Umar bin Hafid, who is like very well known, very famous now, recently his presence to Indonesia, and he always make a visit to Solo, is accompanied by his wife. So Hubaba, it's in online, her name is known as Hubaba Salim bin Hafid, but her original name is Hubaba Nur Al-Hadda. I forgot. Binti Min, I forgot. But anyway, so the Ba'alawi community makes the most of the presence of this Habib from Hadramaut who come to Solo to share their knowledge and religious advice. And I mentioned about Habib Umar bin Hafid as a notable example. He usually visits once in a year to Solo. I mean, in other parts of Indonesia, but also to Solo. But what is important is that he tried together with other graduates who studied to Hadramaut also go back to Solo. So these people, the above example, that it shows that the Ba'alawi community in Solo respect them very much due to their expertise in Islam, but also very importantly, owing to the fact that they carry with them the connection to their homeland. So of course they can invite other people to speak, but the maintenance of the relationship with the homeland here is very, very important. And all, like the sermons that are given by Habib Umar bin Hafid, also available in different online platforms. The fourth point, and I will be quick, marriage restriction among Ba'alawi women. So to maintain the genealogy and identity of the Hadrami, it's number four. In Solo, the Ba'alawi prohibits their daughters of marrying non-Ba'alawi. So, as stated by Mobini Keshe, upholding the status of the Sayyids was an essential part of being Hadrami. Being Hadrami meant kissing Sayyid's hand and upholding marriage restriction. And we have seen many examples in the real life how difficult for a Hadrami woman to marry a non-Hadrami man. And even though, I mean, like they also here in the quotes, if you can see also, they base their argument on the Quranic verse, which is of course debatable, but this is how they try to maintain and to uphold the tradition, the Tariqah Alawiyah, which they believe has to be passed on through generation, and that is why marriage and marrying a woman, a male of Hadrami descent, of Ba'alawi descent, is very important. So, in my paper, I have a very interesting example, but maybe I will not have time to read. And I will now move and I think I will skip maybe the fifth, which is commemorating the death of the saints or Haul, which we know a lot, and how the Haul have also been used by the Hadrami descents to maintain the tradition, but at the same time also to spread the examples, the best examples of the Hadrami leaders, ulama, to the younger generations. And this whole events also been, like it's available throughout the media platform, online media platform. It is usually available live streaming and also available on YouTube. So, and I'm not going to discuss this in detail because Ismail Alatas, for example, has extensively wrote on this, and also he also wrote a lot on the ziyarah. But I will number six, if you can put number six, a ziyarah silaturahim and pilgrimage tour to Hadramaut. So recently, not only they preserving the tradition of the ziyarah of silaturahim, visiting people of the same people of Hadrami descent normally, those who are the elderly in the community, but also they now recently established or organized Umrah Plus. So in addition to go to Makkah and Medina, then you get also to go to Hadramaut. So here, what is important is how the diasporic return helps them to reaffirm and strengthen their identity. And it's a pity that I myself haven't been to Hadramaut, so maybe I have to join one of these tours recently. So the last point, number seven, which I want to highlight here, even though I have mentioned briefly in the other parts of the presentation, is the preaching Tariqah Alawiyah online. So this is a new trend, I would say, that has been adopted mostly by younger generation of the Ba'alawi who are techno-savvy. They, like they get online and they preach the Tariqah Alawiyah online. So, for example, in an Instagram post by Ustad Muhammad Al-Habshi, he put the quote, he has a quote from Habib Ali Al-Habshi. So the quote, like, and then he explained, and it is very interesting how much people actually liked and reacted to the post. So one post, the Kalam of Habib Ali, was actually liked by more than 10,000 people. So now we can see like how the younger generation of this Hadrami and especially the Ba'alawi descents has been using social media platform to also maintain but also spread the teaching, the Tariqah Alawiyah to the wider audience, but mostly the target, I think, also to the younger generation of the Balawi. So to conclude, to make all of us happy, can you show the last part? Yeah. So this picture is the picture of the. Maybe I can see. Yeah. So this picture is the picture of the younger generation of Balawi, and they are wearing the traditional Japanese outfit. So if you go back to my earlier presentation about the identity maintenance, here I'm not sure whether we can see whether they, in this outfit, they maintain their tradition, especially you see more and more people of the Hadrami descent now wearing a full cover, yeah, wearing a niqab. So I will leave this for us to discuss maybe if we have time as to which direction that this younger generation of the Pahlavi descents are heading to. And I would like very much, again, as I mentioned earlier, to focus more on the role of women, which I see is very interesting because in the past, it was actually more the female, the male, Hadrami descent, or especially those who come directly from Hadramaut to Indonesia, to make sure that they have the connection with the homeland. But recent, and because they come here mostly without the wives, so they married to a woman of Indonesian descent. So the woman of Indonesian descent um, plays the role like as an anchor. So the women or the mothers are the ones who connect the children to the Indonesian cultures, traditions. For example, I was asked by Umar, "Do you speak Arabic?" And I said, "My parents' generation were too afraid to ask us to learn Arabic because we were accused of not being assimilated to Indonesian culture." So, and now we see the opposite. We see now, like at least what my experience attending a meeting with Hubabah Noor last Friday in Solo, I was totally amazed. I was the only one who was not wearing a black gamis because majority of them were all covered. So, and so many of them are actually the graduates from Tarim. So, Indonesian Hadrami descents who graduate from Tarim. So, the question is, what is now actually the role of these women? Are they going to be more towards Hadrami? So, I will leave this for our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kayama. So we have, please join us here, and Gary. And we have very rich discussion ranging from the picture of about what is inside the fatwa, the changing of the technology, the shift of technology, shift also this generation, and how youth use internet, and then how also scholars can make use of the digital technology, and how internet also social media change, whether change or not the identity. Of certain Muslim communities. Now I will open the question to so me. Yeah. So you have maybe 20 minutes, eh? Okay, 20 minutes. So okay, maybe two from here and then two from there. First, Haula and oh, Windy, and then Muhajir. One, two, and then three, and then I think I want to have from the very back before. Please state your name and make could somebody help the yeah short question. Short question. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name Windy Triana from UIN Jakarta. My question is about your role as researchers. All of you study social media, digital themes, and digital themes. It seems to be always related to Gen Z, youth, young people. And like in my campus, for example, most of the lecturers, the researchers, they believe that the area of digital research is only for young scholars. So it seems like they say, I'm too old to study these things. And I believe that some of you, it's not from Gen Z. So, so how you deal with the issue? I mean, what kind of skill that you need to master to go into this kind of research, digital themes? Thank you. Thank you, Emily. And then for Mahajir.
Thank you. My name is Mohajir from UIN Banjarmasin. I have a question for Professor Omar, and I may ask a question for Professor Giri. For Professor Omar, you mentioned your skepticism towards the new way of learning historical archives, and then you become convinced. My question is really, um, what do this new way of learning, say, almanac, teach us something that the previous scholars have not told? What is the substantive addition that this new way of doing the research add to the existing knowledge? And for Professor Gary, you mentioned in a few places in your presentation, you raised these two questions. With regard to Islamic influencer in Indonesia, you mentioned, is there real audience? Are they having a real impact? I suppose my question is, how do we measure impact? Some political scientists in Indonesia who have a survey institute, they can do some nationwide surveys and pose questions to 1,200 Indonesians. For example, last year, Denny JA, LSE Denny JA has, for example, a survey on who is the most popular preacher in Indonesia, and of course the answer was Ustad Abdul Somad. But then he has another question whether people who know him, which is about 60 something percent, like him, and whether they would love to follow his advice. And this survey institute have numbers, but then they don't. When a preacher say many fatwas, we don't know which fatwas that people will follow. I, for example, quite like Ustad Abdul Samad when he says something about madahib. But when it comes to, for example, buying coffee in Starbucks or K-pop soap operas, I don't agree with him. So this is also methodological question that, having you have a long experience of researching digital media, you may actually encounter have a solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Ibu, please.
Thank you. My name is Ruby Rahayu. I'm from UIN Malang. I'm interested in what Mr. Gary's discussed about the dynamic of online preachers in Indonesia. But I also have some observation on Hanan Ataki's websites, videos, that I had a kind of conclusion that there is relationship between online and offline relationship. So when you say it is an issue that not any people have the access of internet, for example. But in this case, for example, Hanan Atakis has a specific audience. So his audience are having a good access on the internet, and they are all millennials, young people, and they are urban, and they also build this kind of relationship with the ustad offline. So they have many kinds of ngajian and any other forum. And this says that in Indonesia, the authority built by the preacher online is always connected with the offline one because people want to know what he or she looks like in the real, uh, what they see, what they hear directly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one di paling belakang. Bisa ke depan Bapak? Could you please move forward? Mohon singkat.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks for the chance. The first question for Prof. Jerry. You talk about the fatwa of ulama. So my question is small. I'm sorry, my name is Amanan from Ternate, Yayan Ternate. So my question is still relevant the fatwa of ulama for this digital era, especially for the young people, the teenagers, etc. Maybe you can give the data about the influence of the fatwa of the ulama. The second one is for Madam from Australia. I forget the name. You have research about the teenager from Bandung and Palembang, if I understand. Can you explain more there are two big city of Indonesia, but it can be the representative of the teenager of Indonesia itself. In Islam, we call akhlak, not characteristic. Character. So can you differentiate the two terms and the influence of the your research about especially the teenager from to big city, Palembang and Bandung. And the last one is for Madam Fatima from Turkey. I think the phenomenon is there are many people from Arabic, especially international many. We have Albar, we have Asiga. So how long the influence of the Hadramaut, if I mistake, is the same. Maybe I have the data or I can give the information about the Arabic people in Ternate, especially in the city of Ternate. Maybe it has the same phenomena like Solo and other cities in Indonesia. Thanks so much for the chat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, we have only 10 minutes in total. So we'll start 10 minutes, 2 minutes. Maybe from Sure.
Okay, thank you for your question, Wendy. I'm very poor. I have very poor knowledge about the digital world, so I employ millennials to do my detailed research online. So, for example, I did a project on video gaming, and I don't know anything about video gaming. Fortnite, I don't know anything, for example. So I always have to employ young people. And then because I'm a sociologist and I use my own analytical frameworks to analyze the data that they give me.
So I don't expect them to analyse what they're seeing. I get them to create a kind of content analysis or accumulation of material from the internet, and then I analyse it. But because I don't understand, I'm not on Instagram, I don't tweet, I don't do any of those things, so I get them to do it, and then I analyse the data. That's my answer to your question.
Maybe you can continue.
Oh, yes, replying to your question. The young people that I was talking to in Palembang, in Bandung, in Yogyakarta, in Jakarta, they were all university students. So it's not really a question of whether they came from a smaller town, because they were university students. So they didn't necessarily come from Palembang, for example. They could have come from anywhere. But the point is, it's really about their social class privilege. But they were very, very well educated. They'd gone to the best schools, and now they were at very high class universities like UI, UGM, ITB, and Universitas Sriwijaya in Palembang. So really, what you are seeing there in their knowledge is in how sophisticated they were was because of their class privilege rather than their actual location. So if I'd gone into a small village, for example, or remote part of Indonesia, I may not have found exactly the same situation because they had that kind of confidence that comes from going through a very privileged education system right to the very end. It didn't matter whether they'd been to SMP, SMA, Pesantren, or Madrasah. The point is that that's the families they came from were class privileged families in the first place.
Very clear. I think, would you please?
Just very quickly for answering your question. It's very interesting. Well, so what? I mean, this is a really a relevant question. This is actually was my answer 2 years ago. But now, because I have seen the results myself as a historian, I say, no, this can change our knowledge. Why? Because of this accumulation of data. I mean, just like, Almanar is a specific case. I mean, just, okay, we know Rashid Rida, we know all the spots of his life, but just go to another corpus. Try the fiqh, for example, and have just a corpus of fiqh from the 17th century. And they try to use this you can just really define where and how these things develop if you use this. And topic modeling is just one theme. You have also many other themes in this machine learning. To start with, for example, my colleague Ahmad is trying to solve the problem of the OCR. You know, all these PDF in Arabic. It's very difficult to change them into Word or just to make them, friendly, usable. And he is trying to use this machine learning in order to teach them how to have the OCR. You name it. I mean, just there are many examples that I could say. He's just now going in the digital fatwa, what we have heard from Professor Mon, and then trying to extract all these fatwas from different websites and forums and try to analyze them with these things to discover where and how, what are the concerns of Muslims nowadays on the digital era. But anyhow, it's a new field, wide field, and really it's now we are testing the results and they are really amazing and can transform our knowledge as I have said.
And I think
Yeah, even though I'm not that young, but I think, yeah, as Pam has said also, I also have some research assistants, but I'm also quite active on Instagram, at least to check on, their accounts, even though not to, update my profile or my activities. But yeah, I mean, we have to be techno savvy. We have to understand what's going on, what they use as the platforms. So I don't think that it is confined only for young researchers. So, like quite senior, if I may use the word, a researcher can also do a lot of research related to this issue. And again, like it's also depend on how we analyze the data, etc. So maybe we can ask help from some younger researcher, but we have the like the responsibility, of course, to process the data. And I don't get the name from us from Ternate. Yeah, even though the case that I mentioned was about Solo, I believe that it is also the practices that also took place in different parts of Indonesia. Just a brief note on my participation with the gathering, the sermons that was delivered by Hubabah Nur, I mentioned earlier, the wife of Habib Umar bin Hafid. Before we listened to her sermon, it was preceded by a series of sermons, short sermons by the graduates, the women graduates of Hadrami descent from Tarim. So among them also some young graduates from Ambon, for example, from Kendari. So these people also learn from Tarim, and that they base now in different parts of Indonesia and try also to spread what they have learned from Hadramaut. So it is, I believe it is not topical, I mean, typical of Solo.
Okay, well, I've got a few questions here. I'll start with, was it Winded? Yeah. Question. Well spotted that I'm not Gen Z or millennial or anything like that. I sometimes feel like one of those dancing dads at parties that it's a phenomenon in the UK, you know, trying to get down with the youth. I don't want to do any of that. But it's a good question, but I think that in looking at this, you have to look at the longer trends. I've been looking at the digital material for 25 years plus. I was using computers for many years before that. And I think you need to connect the dots. That's why I showed the old machines and the old phones. I think we're moving through a very dynamic phase and it's very compressed. And you need to get some sort of oversight and overview, which is what I'm trying to do. I've tried to capture what's going on, trying to make a record of it, a bit like these sort of old journals you read from years ago, the chroniclers, you know, trying to just get snapshots of the activity. I think in the future it'll be possible to go back through that archive and make a more holistic understanding, because we don't know what's around the corner. What's next? Wearable technology, AI, as Peter was saying, all of those things, the blockchain, all of that is going to have to be observed as well. So you've got to see it in a linear fashion, not just trying to capture the zeitgeist of right now. Get the whole pattern, because otherwise you'll miss a lot as well. So hopefully that's answered that one. I really like the question though. Influencers and surveys. Well, we don't always trust surveys anyway. I mean, they can be manipulated, as you know. So that's an important thing as well. Measuring the impact of something like a fatwa. Of course, you've got the same question whether it's digital or non-digital, but I think there are some ways of doing it. You can look at the hits, you can look at the repostings, you can see how it's turned up in conversations. You can see that sort of linear impact there. My feeling is that if somebody's taking the effort to put all these opinions down into cyberspace, they must feel that there's an audience out there. They wouldn't be doing it just for nothing or for vanity or for anything like that. I think they feel that there's a real audience out there and they have a long-term impact as well. It's not just about putting a fatwa out and getting an audience for the next 7 days. It's the next 7 years, because that opinion's searchable. People will go back to it again and again and again. You can go back 15, 20 years and look at opinions. So measuring those opinions is very difficult. There was a recent fatwa about kidney transplantation in the UK that I thought about in response to your question. It was really interesting to see how quickly that transmitted itself, not just through Islamic media, but through other forms of media as well. Within a week, it had circulated quite rapidly. And it's just interesting to see, you know, in that particular case, the dynamic. But it's a very good question about methodology. I can talk to you about it some more a bit later on. And what else was there? There was the question about impact attacking and on and offline. That was really interesting. Of course, you're going to have people who aren't connected to the internet, although most people seem to have their phones working now, but not everybody wants to look at that kind of information. I think you can see the impact to the way in which it's copied. Sometimes people will print these things out and put them into other publications. They might be used in a khutbah or something else. You see some sort of way in which the offline impact is there. It can also impact the behavior of individuals who are talking to others. So they might be talking to generations who are not so web savvy, but their impact is going to be there because their thoughts are being derived from sources that have been derived obtained online. So you've got that possibility as well in terms of that dynamic. But again, I could talk about that a little bit more. There was another question about the influence and impact of the fatwa. You can take a look at the book. There's a lot of information. I answer that question in this one. But also the searchability is really important. It depends on the issue. You have to explore it in terms of kind of impact and issues. It's a very difficult one to measure. But again, I know we're constrained by time, but it's something we can talk about a lot more out of this session.
Okay, thanks so much, Eric, Fatima, Pam, and Riyadh. I think we come to the end of the discussion of the panel, and I just realized that we do not only discuss about the analysis, the content, the findings, and then more new question actually we find. We also learn about the methodology on how we do research and using digital technology. I would like to conclude this session by saying thank you to all the speakers, and please give applause, big applause to all the speakers. Okay, I give to the committee. Oh, there will be a token of appreciation. I think I will give to Prof. Nurhaidi. Prof. Nurhaidi, please come forward to give.
kan? Puro tayo dulu. Palingan orang pegang. Cik, kita mau. Ketuanya tu.
Itu ya population ini berjalan. Harusnya dibuat seperti berbicara dari akun Twitter gitu. Kita buatnya itu solid yang gitu Pak. Dari sekali take langsung. Saya kalau terlalu siapa saya nggak bisa lah. Otomatis saya jadi bilang, nggak ada minum lah. Karena dia kalau maksud dia buatnya juga dia. Oh iya, kita live tadi malam.